Hey everyone, happy Wednesday. We're here back doing a live chat. It's cold here, so I can't take off my scarf. I'm freezing. I am sorry, but I am freezing today. So getting caught up in the December busy. How many of you are like, it's magical and it's wonderful, but yet it's also stressful because you're like socially booked out crazy and just trying to get presents and get, coordinated with everyone. It's a lot, but this time of year makes me like cry all the time because I love Santa and I love magic. And yeah, hey everybody, good morning, welcome. Got a lot of questions that you guys have sent the last week. So we're going to, oh shoot, can you even hear me? Because I think I have my mic plugged in and I don't even have it on. Well, that's a faux pas. If I ever heard one. Is that better, guys? Hey, guys. I don't even know if that's better, if it even matters. So the first question on all of your videos is the one you did about your niece. I have two questions about green burial alternatives, yada, yada. Okay, what is required to what is required to relocate a loved one, both within the same cemetery or from one cemetery to another? Is a funeral director required or maybe at least recommended? So each state is different. Typically, and a lot of them, with a few exceptions, the county or the health department or somebody within the jurisdiction is going to need to be involved with the permit in that part of it. And then almost every state, with a few exceptions, as always, the funeral director must oversee it and get the authorization from the family. And then sometimes the cemetery is involved in terms of giving authorization and such. So like in Michigan, the family fills out a permit. We file it with the health department. The health department authorizes it. They give us back a disposition permit, and then we coordinate it with the cemetery, and that is what the cemetery puts on file, is that permit. And then we have to oversee the deceased while they're above ground. So we're kind of, just like before any other disposition, the funeral director has to oversee that person. So when we go on removals, Jeff, we sometimes are by ourselves, sometimes you go on a team. It really just depends on the funeral home and the scenario. Most often when you go to a home or a residence, it's a two-person job just because you don't know what you're going to encounter, and you can't always know that you're going to get help from a family or from whoever is there on site. Nursing homes, hospitals, often will be one person going, but it depends. As I said, if you're hiring a service to go, they may have two people always on call going on all of the removals. Just depends on the scenario. Oh, it's me. I'm so sorry that your mom died. You're so welcome. I hope everything's gone smoothly with it and in planning for her. So Brad's asking, if you pre-plan and pay for your funeral down the road, you want to use a different funeral home, is that something can be done? Of course. Your money is not paid into a funeral home. It's paid into a trust or a life insurance. And so that just needs to be cashed in when the time comes, and that can go to pay anyone. What is locked in is whatever your initial contract was with that funeral home, their guarantee of their prices. So your money will always be there. It's kind of like a fund towards your funeral. However, that guarantee of savings, where over time as the price increases, what you pay doesn't increase, that's locked in with one funeral home only. So you won't lose that money, but you'll lose that price lock-in guarantee. What do you do if someone has a metal casket and want to be cremated? So there's crematories who will try to cremate inside the casket. More likely than not, they'll have you also purchase the cardboard, simple box to cremate in, and then you recycle the casket and take it to a metal recycler. I was born in Dallas, Texas, and lived there when JFK was assassinated. I have many memories of that. Everything about the incident still fascinates me. I found several videos of interviews of some of the trauma room surgeons who worked on Kennedy. They've all described the gaping wound on the right side of his head. One surgeon described it about 5 inches across. How do you prepare such a body for presentation? Or does it have to be closed casket? No, in my opinion, just because of what I know that many people are capable of, it's very rare that you need to have a closed casket and that somebody can't ever see somebody. Between rebuilding the skulls and waxwork and all sorts of different things, you can recreate so much. So oftentimes, if there's a hole, some of that tissue and that bone is just maybe elsewhere. So maybe it was still in the car, maybe it was blown up, maybe it was blown in. So it may still have a lot of it been there to work with to remodel into the face and the shape of his skull. So there's a lot that can be done. You can definitely rebuild, move hair around, use fake hair, use from a wig to cover where the hair was. There's a lot that can be done. So I am sure they had the best of the best working on him at that time to be able to view him later. And so I am sure that is the case, is that they had their best restorative artists that they have and brought them in to do that. Do you always cut clothes when dressing? I've heard that it's done to make clothes fit better. So your body lays so much differently in your clothing that you could go from standing up and it looked great and lay down and it's going to not fit quite right. So just try it. Go lay down and have somebody take a picture of how your clothing is on you, and you're going to see it's going to pull and rumple and it's not going to lay quite right. I have found that no matter if it's too big, too small, or exactly what they wore the day before they died, cutting the clothing allows us to alter it to look better on the person as they're laying. And that's just my personal opinion. There are funeral directors that do not cut, will not cut. It's just kind of against what they want to do. There's people who cut all the time. It's just personal preference. But I have seen the difference it makes. I have put on clothing non-cut and then cut it and re-put it on the person just to see the difference. And you really can manipulate it more, and it doesn't pull as much in certain areas. Even just a basic white dress shirt is going to pull here and across here, just because those are your tension points where it just pulls on the shirt. It's going to look better if you cut. That's my opinion. Let's see. When a person dies napping in the fetal position or not a normal flat position, and rigor has set in, is the person transported to the funeral home on the stretcher in that strange position, or are they straightened out on the stretcher at the scene? Basically, have you received bodies in the funeral home that are still in strange positions, still in rigor? Let's see. Sometimes they have been where they've been seated and died in recliners, which is it's common. It's not abnormal. Even a lot of people who might be on hospice and, failing, they're just more comfortable sitting up, especially if they're having breathing problems and such. They just like to be upright. So they may be in the recliner and such. We will bend them and break out the rigor to try and get them to lay flat as much as we can while we're at the home. No breaking of the rigor is not breaking any bones. You're not destructive. You're not hurting. The family's not going to hear this break of any kind. You're basically just, if you have like a tensed up muscle, you're just working it out so that that arm is mobile, that leg is mobile again, instead of kind of contracted up. So that's when you're breaking out the rigor, there's no breaking. You're just working out a tensed up muscle. So yes, I haven't had anybody come in where they're like all bundled, you know, sitting, like going from a sitting, laying them straight back and their arms and legs are still up in the air. You can definitely kind of straighten that person out. And often if somebody's found in a weird, odd position, it's after a little period of time where maybe the rigor is already gone at that point. Have you ever had to remove a casketed body from the visitation room while it was going on to work on issues? Or would you ask folks to leave the room instead of moving the deceased? Or do you just try to nonchalantly go up and discreetly fix the problem? I have never had where I have had to remove the body from the room during visitation. I did go in once right before the family was going to be coming in, and we quickly had to take the person back to the preparation room to reaspirate because pressure was building up. I think we had a tissue gas issue that had just not shown itself until a little too late in the game. And we reaspirated in between visitations and next morning. And just, we had a lot of issues going on with the person. I have had people where they'll start to leak during visitation. One gentleman started running out of his ear and a little bit of blood. And so we just went up and discreetly took some tissue and stuffed it into their ear to get through visitation. And then afterwards, we sealed up the ear and packed it with some stuff and just did what we could to try and kind of close that opening. I've had people when they were leaking out of their mouth. The sister-in-law stood by the casket and dabbed their mouth the rest of visitation. That was also a case of tissue gas showing itself. The initial embalming, the chemicals were not the correct chemicals. Somebody from a different area embalmed that person. And we found out later when we were having all these issues, we got the report as to what they used and found out that the fluid was definitely not what should have been used. It should have been much stronger, no humectant, which is like a lotion-based fluid. And so the gentleman was he was decomposing really quickly. And that tissue gas was just, it was attacking all of them. And so we were getting the purging and the skin was kind of sloughing off on his arms and his face and his hand. It was going downhill really quick. We took dry ice and packed his whole abdomen in dry ice overnight. And so we made it through the service and were able to leave the casket open. But it was one of those when the casket closed, you take a big, deep breath because you kind of made it through without any major catastrophe. Oh, cheesy potatoes. Oh, they're so good. Rainy England. On the person's bottom half. Okay, so on the coffin, they put a nameplate on it to put the person's name. This is often done here on the vault. It's so that if anything happens, maybe you have a flood and bodies come up, or maybe you have to go down and, however many years from now, you're digging down that metal plate you're going to find. You're going to know who is in that coffin, whose bones those are, and such. And so there's just, a name put there so that there's some definitive answer as to who the person was. Yes, embalming definitely changes the appearance of the person. The coloring can be balanced out, which is the number one thing I see. You can also kind of fill out somebody who's maybe emaciated or super dehydrated, lost a lot of weight type thing. So you can make a big difference with that aspect of it. However, sometimes embalming goes too far, where they fill them out too much and they try to take off too many years with their restorative work. I've talked about, I had a friend who, she was 100 when she died and didn't have a wrinkle on her face. They had used too much restoring, whether it was during the embalming or whether with tissue filler, but they had tried too hard to make her look too young. At 100, you're going to be wrinkled. So it's trying too hard and just letting a person look like they look in some aspects. So it really depends on the embalmer and the preparer. Yes, bring in cologne and perfume. I'm shocked always that it's not done more than it is. Organ donor videos. So it's been a year in the making, and so still it's one of those that I edit on it as I can, but other videos also come up. So I have so many videos to edit and so little time. So looking into maybe hiring an editor and seeing if they can do a video in my vision. So that might help as well. I have no idea how any of that works. So as I am growing and getting busier, I'm trying to keep up with, I guess, the demand in different ways. So working on it. Yes, I'm invited to the luncheon or repast after this service often, I would say, especially if we're there and such, they invite us over. I have never gone to one. To me, that's something for the family. Even if we're there for the luncheon or like during the funeral service, I won't go sit and eat the food. Even if the church ladies invite me, I will eat potato chips or maybe a brownie. When I was pregnant, I would eat the baked beans too. They always sounded good. I don't know why. But otherwise, I don't like cold lunch meat. I guess that's something to know about Kari. I don't like cold lunch meat. So I don't like, like ham sandwiches, things like that. So it's not really my type of food at most visitations anyway. But it's just, to me, it's the family's. It's not mine. It's their moment. It's their time. It's not mine to be part of. I'm going to be doing a video on dressing, hopefully coming up here. I've just got to coordinate some people's schedules to help me do that. Let's see. Oop, I'm going to sit down my drink. What does a funeral director do to prepare and rid maggots from an infested corpse, perhaps for a viewing? Maggots suck, and they are really weird and creepy to watch move around and wiggle and squirm, especially if you have hundreds of them squirming and stuff at the same time. Typically, if you're to that stage, there's advanced decomposition or some major damage to the person. But if we do have some maggot or insect activity that we need to clear up, we will often use, well, there's two sides. You can use kind of everyday stuff like gasoline or kerosene. And I don't mean like burn it off. One instance, I could see the most minuscule little baby larva in this gentleman's ear moving. And so I just took Q-tips with kerosene on them and swabbed the ears and removed the ones that I could see. And that smell keeps them away and will kill out what's in there. There's also some chemicals and things that are created for the funeral directing business. There's one, I believe, I'm probably going to say this wrong. Is it Frigid Fluid Company? And it's called Stop. Don't quote me on that. And it'll stop insects and kill them off, so that you can then move forward with what you need to do. The use of the cooker, and that is, as winter is coming, can you explain for those who don't know the use of the cooker? I'm assuming you mean at the cemetery. So it's kind of like a heater. You put it over the grave and you turn it on and it warms up under this lid essentially, and it will warm up and kind of thaw through that frost layer down in the ground so that you can dig out the grave. Have you ever received a body comes to you with no head or half is missing or just little parts? Would one choose casket and vault still if they wanted to do burial? I mean, you could do burial with just a leg. Think about people that are coming back from war that have been completely dismembered, and you may not have all of them. Or think about 9/11. People were burying caskets with like one or two pieces of somebody inside of them, because that's what they, a casket isn't just in case the person, it's also a symbol of death. And it helps us to understand that somebody has died, whether we're seeing who's inside or not. And if that's all we have, for us to see that symbol is also mentally important to kind of help process some of that. So if we don't have the whole person, then still using that casket and having it set out for the service is, important as well. But they can also choose to cremate the parts that we do have for the service and have them cremated. So it's up to the family what they would like to do, but we work with whatever we have. We can embalm just a leg. If they're missing their head, we can embalm still what's there if we need to, or just bury with what is there. Or we can store the person until we recover the head if we are still looking for it, or for an arm if we're still looking for it, thinking of maybe like accidents and tragedy of that kind where maybe there's still some recovery going on from, let's say, a plane accident, something like that. Where the ovens are at the video, I hope there's AC. Oh, the crematory. So wondering if it's hot in there, if they have AC. I don't find that it's exceptionally hot inside the crematory. Inside the actual retort, when the doors open and if the flame is engaged, uber hot, like super, super hot. Those things are over 1,600 degrees if they're kicking. So those are super hot, but once the doors close, that heat's not being emitted out. I mean, it's definitely maybe warmer than another room would be, but it wasn't overly hot. It's not overly hot inside of there, I don't think. Do you keep the clothes on a person or take them off before the crematory? We will dress a person in whatever the family would want us to dress them in. We will, just like burying somebody, sometimes you want them in a certain outfit or in certain articles of clothing. And so we can dress them in something or take them to the crematory in maybe just a hospital gown. If they come to us unclothed, we, depending on the funeral home, will put on a hospital gown at least so that they're not just, naked going over to the crematory. So it just depends on the place, though, what their mode of operation is. What's the oldest body you have seen that is still perfectly preserved from the embalming? I've done several disinterments, some though we have never had to open the vault, let alone the casket. So you could do 100 disinterments and never actually see a body because of the situation. I mean, the only one I've really been and seen the body that was older. One was from the 50s, so it was just bones. And then one was like 3-4 years old, and he was super, super moldy. Those are the two main ones that stick out in my mind. Do you get spooked working alone late at night in a funeral home? I don't really. I'm really comfortable walking in the dark through a funeral home when I've been to that funeral home a lot because you know where everything is, just like walking through your house. You know, you often don't turn on lights at night. There are some spaces in certain funeral homes that I feel a weird presence in, if that makes any sense. So I often will look a little more around me then. I'm more worried leaving a funeral home at night, walking to my car because of the living people that are outside that you just don't know what they're going to do. Thank you guys. Thank you for support and so many kind words. So you found your mom and her eyes were black. The blood pooled, right? It's going to be because probably the pressure, if she was slumped forward, the pressure into her eyes could have caused them to turn black. And they didn't do an autopsy, so most likely she had a pre-existing health condition. So if there's a pre-existing health condition of any type that is going to lead to a natural cause, you know, heart, lung, kidney failure, dialysis, diabetes, cancer, any of these type of things that would lead to more of a natural cause, they're not going to do an autopsy usually. Oh, Kara, that's awesome. Where are you going to go to mortuary school? So Tony, no, they are brought back typically to the States and they are taken care of here at Mortuary Affairs. Unless there's some other situation going on, or if it's during wartime, they may be then kind of field embalmed, where an initial preservation method is taken, but usually they're packed up over wherever they are, and then they're sent in to the stateside mortuary affairs. Whole church crypt being exhumed in England. Lots of bodies from 1800s were well to preserve. Not sure if it's still posted. I'll have to look for that one. I haven't seen that about the exhumation in England. Oh, you're in Ireland. So fun. I want to come there next. That's so exciting. So is it an embalming school or a funeral directing school, or is it one and the same there? Is it common for someone to think a lot more about death and everything involved when a parent dies? Well, yeah, you're going to think more about everything when it's kind of in your face and happening to you. You're going to definitely think about death more. I think when you encounter it, then definitely you are going to think about it more. What do you do with unclaimed? So the unclaimed goes back on the state or the county, and then they will decide their method of handling unclaimed individuals. They will try their best to find someone that will handle the affairs for the deceased. If they don't, then they will call on a funeral home who will volunteer to handle that person's care, whether it's burial or cremation, most often cremation, and the medical examiner will sign off on that cremation. And then, yeah, then everything's taken care of, and the cremated remains may be stored with the funeral home until they do a mass burial, or until there's, you know, something that the medical examiner maybe does a mass burial once a year. So it's a little different everywhere, but there's like hardly any funds for it. Funeral homes donate their services in a lot of ways. Crematories donate their services. So it's just one of those things that we have to do because it's what our job is. We take care of those who are dead, whether they have someone willing to take care of them or not. Have you ever had to take a body away from a job site? We had a bad accident in Cincinnati on a job site. If the coroner is there, do they pronounce the death? So if there's a death on a job site, then like OSHA is involved and definitely going to have an autopsy. And so funeral home, only if they do the removals for the medical examiner would they be the ones coming over. Typically, the coroner medical examiner are going to be doing the removal to go back to their offices. So you still have like a Potter's Field, Howard TV for burial. Yeah, it's less expensive to cremate. However, it's not reversible. So I think a lot of counties are still debating that, do we pay and use grave space for the unclaimed individuals just in case their family comes back for them, or do we cremate them and save, samples of their DNA and everything so that way they can then take their loved one a little more easily, because otherwise you have to dig the person up and then maybe move them to wherever they want to move to. So I think there's a lot of pros and cons on both sides, and counties and states are choosing what is most cost effective and least cumbersome for themselves as well. Ryan, that's a great question. Like, we have had an individual that was fully skeletal remains. She was found after a long period of time, and her mother came in and laid her out in the casket. She really just wanted to do what she could for her daughter. I think it's situational. I would more err on leaving the skeletal remains inside of some kind of a box. Otherwise, as you move that casket around, those bones are going to just be falling off to the side under the bed, and they're not going to stay where you put them. So I would err more on leaving them inside of some kind of container, putting them inside of the casket. Jason, you're starting to tell me a story about you got cut off there. Time flew today. This morning I was thinking, oh my gosh, I feel like I just did my live video, and it was last week. So time flies. You guys have been really giving some good questions and providing a lot of good topics for me to discuss every week. So keep the questions coming. Email them over to me. Friday, it's Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, 2 days from now, posting my video, my conversation with a young widow. It's a little bit longer video. It's like 45 minutes, but check it out. Talking with Nadal about losing her husband. Matt was really, really amazing, and what she is doing in transforming that loss into kind of some powerful movement for herself is really awesome. So check that out on Friday. Make sure you find a video that resonates with you and share it with somebody. Help us grow. I say us because I can't do this channel alone. It would just be me posting videos and nobody watching. So it's all about you guys and how you drive the channel and what you want to learn about. So keep conversation going with me. Questions, just send them over to me on email or post them in comments, and I will see you guys back next Wednesday. We're approaching Christmas, so that'll throw off our schedule there a little bit, but hope you guys have a good week. Stay warm. It's getting chilly. So I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.